I'm Scott McLean from Trance Music Mastery. In this video, I will show you how Adam Sabo created a bass sound like the one heard in Open Window by Sergei Shabanov. And the sound that we will make sounds like this. Okay, let's get started. Let me go ahead and move Zebra 2 out of the way and I'll walk through the MIDI sequence. So it's based on A, so we have A1, and then it just goes up an octave at the end. And then you hear a vibrato effect being applied, and that's applied based on a modulation. And as you'll see when I show you how to do this patch, the modulation wheel is being used to modulate an LFO that's controlling the pitch of oscillator 1. So this is an automation envelope that's being used to increase the modulation wheel amount when that last note hits. So let me go ahead and play through this and you'll see how this envelope is affecting the patch. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, I'm starting from the initialize patch. And before I walk through the steps necessary to produce this, let's just take a quick look at the sound map. So we have an oscillator with a saw wave, and as I mentioned earlier in the video, an LFO is being used to modulate the pitch of oscillator 1. And then we also have some noise present in this patch as well. So there is a noise generator. And then both the saw wave and the white noise are being mixed and go through a filter. And in this case, it's using Zebra 2's LP Vintage filter type. That's being modulated by envelope 2 to affect the cutoff frequency with a zero attack, medium decay, sustain around 75.5% of its full value, and medium release. And then that flows into an amplifier with envelope 1 modulating the volume with zero attack, fast decay, sustain at 86.5% of the full volume, and a medium release. And then that flows through an EQ with a low shelf filter with plus 7.5 dB boost near 300 Hz, bandpass filter with a plus 3.5 dB boost near 175 Hz, and then a bandpass with a plus 6.0 dB boost near 3 kHz. And then that flows into the main output. And Adam says a single saw waveform with a low octave to make it even more bassy. The low frequencies are boosted, and it's also increased at the 3 kHz range to make it more present. Noise is added in modulation. An LFO is added to the pitch of the saw to make the vibrato effect. Okay, so let's go ahead and program this patch. So we're starting from the initialize patch, and we're going to leave the global section with its default values based on the initialize patch. And for oscillator 1, what we're going to do is set up the LFO1 to modulate the pitch of the oscillator, or the tune parameter here. And we'll set this to 17, set the LFO1 amount to 17.0. And that's all we need to do for the oscillator. We are using the default values for everything else. Next, what we want to do is add a noise generator. Now, initially, before I add the noise generator, that LFO amount, if I hold a key down, so the next thing I want to do is actually just bring down the amplitude on the LFO so that it does not have any effect yet. Alright, so let's add the noise generator. And for this, we need to lower the volume. So I'll bring it all the way down to 0. I'll bring it up, and we're going to increase the volume to 12.0. And that's it. So next, let's look at the envelope 1, and we want to leave attack at 0. Decay, we're going to lower that to 10.5. In fact, what I'll start doing now is go ahead and play the MIDI sequence in the background as I do this. And sustain, I'll bring that up to 86.5. And release, set that to 32.5. And then the velocity scaling, we will set that to 0. Okay, next we want to add a filter, so VCF1, and set the filter mode to LP Vintage. And we will set cutoff to 68.0. And now we want to modulate the cutoff with another envelope, so select ENV2 and set the ENV2 amount to 56. Okay, and now let's just tweak the envelope 2 settings. We will leave attack at 0. Decay, I'm going to bring that to 41.5. Sustain, bring that down some to 75.5. In fact, I'll start all the way at 0 and then bring it up. And release, set that to 35. And velocity scaling, set that to 0. Okay, and finally, let's configure LFO1. We're going to set the sync parameter to 1/8 note. And the waveform, we're going to set that to triangle. And then I've already brought amp down to 0. So we'll leave that where it is. And we'll set this final modulation up at the end. So next what we want to do is add an EQ. And here we're going to configure the low shelf filter. We're going to set that near 300 Hertz and add a 7.5 dB boost. So let me do that. Next, we want to take filter 2, which is a bandpass filter, apply a 3.5 dB boost near 175 Hertz. And for this one, we want to have a wide bandwidth, so we will bring the resonance down to 0. And it's slightly less than 175 Hertz. So next, filter 3, which is also a bandpass filter, we will give it a 6 dB boost near 3 kilohertz, and that also will use a wide Q setting. Okay, and that's it for the EQ. The next thing we want to do is go to the modulation matrix. Now, I will go through this in more depth later in the course. I'll be showing more examples of how to configure this and walking through in more depth how it works. but we're going to use this to set up a modulation, basically hook up the modulation wheel to control this amplitude on the LFO. All right, so that if we increase the modulation wheel amount, that ends up increasing the amplitude amount like this. All right, and what will happen is, I'll just demonstrate manually what will be happening. I will play the sequence and I will manually increase this amplitude envelope enough to where it sounds similar to what we're going for. So you hear that vibrato effect being applied right at the end on that last bass note in the sequence. So to do that, to hook the mod wheel up to this amp control here on the LFO1, we want to use one of the slots in the modulation matrix. And I'm just going to click on this, and here is where we assign the modulation wheel as a source, and we want to increase that to the maximum value. I'm going to skip that in this video, and like I said, later in the course I will do another video that walks through this in more detail. And then the target is going to be LFO1 amplitude. And so now the mod wheel is assigned to control LFO1 amplitude over here. Now we could also do it by using this control here to modulate the amp. It just depends on what your preference is. Now at this point, because I have, let me move this out of the way, and we'll look at the MIDI clip again and look at the modulation envelope for the modulation wheel that I have configured here. If I bring this all the way down to 0, then the mod wheel is going to stay at 0 and the sequence will sound like this. Now I will play it and I will increase this envelope setting so that what is happening is it's increasing the mod wheel amount, which in turn is driving this amp amount here. So let me go ahead and demonstrate that. Okay, so that's the kind of effect that we're trying to achieve. And the last thing to do is just increase the output overall. And we want to increase that to 56.37. So let me do that. And that completes the open window bass patch. I'll see you in the next video.